I suppose look at, if we quickly look back at the last week, sure, in general for most dairy farmers, it's been an absolute dream in terms of ground conditions, trafficability all over the country has been excellent. It's been excellent conditions for grazing, but also excellent conditions for getting out a bit of chemical fertilizer and getting out some slurry as well. If we look at the figures again for this week, look at the average farm cover, and growth are relatively static as expected. But if we look at some of the dry matters that are coming in, George, over the last week, they're it's very, very high. They're up over 19% there from Moore Park from early this week. Now, we would expect with the bit of rain that's coming during the week that this will drop back down again. But I suppose it's just to hammer home the message that grass very dry at the minute, and there is feeding value in it. So it's about, I suppose, the importance of getting the allocations correctly and not to waste grass.
Yeah.
If we didn't just move, George, into, I suppose, the predicted rainfall and the temperatures and the maps for the coming week, there's probably been a little bit of rain over the last couple of nights along the western seaboard, but probably we're looking at in the region of somewhere in around 20-25 mil for the western seaboard, and 10-15 mil for the east and southeast of the country. So in general, ground conditions aren't going to deteriorate that badly, which is great for the middle of February, and it's going to give busy dairy farmers a super opportunity to turn animals out to grass. And then I suppose with the dry soil conditions, the slight increases in air temperature is going to change soil temperatures as well, and so we'll probably see another degree in soil temperatures over the coming weeks as well, over the coming week as well. All right.
Okay, great.
So I suppose just then, George, to cover off on a couple of key things for the week. Ground conditions are good, so continue to be aggressive and turn animals out to grass if you can. There's probably a little bit of we'll call it a split, or two things happening in the country at the minute. You probably have people, maybe autumn calvers, or early winter milkers, or maybe early spring calvers, January calvers that are have been grazing aggressively over the last 3 weeks. They're absolutely motoring through ground at the minute. And then maybe you have people more, we'll call it bit northerly in the the country a bit further, maybe western seaboard, or maybe only calving animals maybe in the last week or 10 days and are only getting going. All right, so I suppose if we were to look at that, was 40% of the covers that came in on pasture base there over the last few weeks were under 700. So if you just to hammer home that point is, if you've been grazing heavy for the last couple of weeks or grazing hard for the last few weeks, it'd be no harm to do another measure very, very soon, George, in terms of keeping an eye on that farm cover that it doesn't tank, because if you have a high demand, it'll you can take 150 off an average farm cover very, very fast. But in general, for the vast majority of people in the country, George, it's going to be, a lot of people are taking out a wet paddock or two, over the last week, and should do again this week. What I would say also with that is we have to think of the start of the second rotation, so that that fast growing, reseeded field with decent access, get a couple of those nipped off at the same time as well.
Okay. Just goes to prove one thing now, Joseph, in fairness. There's no pleasing you. Because some of the time you're telling us we're not grazing enough, and now you're telling us we're grazing too fast.
Yeah, that's for sure. Never happy that.
I suppose what you're saying in reality though is, so go on the third roughly for the month, but keep an eye on farm cover as well. It's not really the message.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is, 500 is bottom, but we like to say 550 just to kind of keep that little bit of fat in the system. But so if you are starting at 650 or something like that of an average farm cover, you don't have much wiggle room.
Yeah.
So
and maybe the other thing then is you don't want to hit the 550 till the end of March anyway.
That's yeah. So it's going to be a very small proportion of people, but it's just, I suppose, it's just a key point to remember.
Okay.
And I suppose two things just to cover off on, George, as well. I I know we're out on podcast, but on Pasture Base there's a tool called the grazing calculator. Okay, and when you're in cover data, when you open the Pasture Base app and you're in cover data, the grazing calculator is about halfway down, and it is difficult enough at the minute. There's fresh calvers being added to, say, a group that's going to grass, on the daily. So areas are changing. There's different covers in paddocks, and also demand probably ratcheting up a little bit there. Cows are eating a little bit more, if they're 2 or 3 weeks calved. So there's a grazing calculator there that all you do is you stick in the paddock number, the cover will be there, and it has the area. And all you have to do then is put the number of animals that's going to grass, and it will give you, based on the paddock, the amount of days grass that are there in that paddock. And you can also actually put in the length and width of the paddock, which will give you, or say the length of the paddock if it's a fairly square rectangular paddock, and it'll give you that allocation that maybe where to set up your temporary wire. Now look, as it is, it's trial and error, but this is just this little tool on the Pasture Base app is just a good guide, for the next number of weeks.